The rain on and off through the night, but certainly by dawn, many places seeing thick cloud and outbreaks of rain, and 10 degrees because of the cloud cover. But chilly start for East Anglia and the southeast, as well as the East Midlands. Low single figures possible in some sheltered spots. However, it's here where we keep the sunny spells into Wednesday afternoon, whilst the area of rain in the north pushes into northern England, eventually the North Midlands, as well as parts of Wales, and tends to peter out. Thursday and Friday look very unsettled with strong winds, showers and longer spells of rain.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hey, welcome along to the Mark Steyn Show. We have a jam-packed show for you. Not just jam-packed, but actual organic lemon curd pack, maybe with just a hint of ginger. Get woke, go broke has been a truism for some time, applied to everything from half-wit corporate blunders like Gillette Razor's toxic masculinity ad to this autumn's leaden gay rom-com bros. But if financial institutions, essentially banking institutions are now doing it, we could be in for a seriously bumpy ride. We'll talk woke capitalism with Toby Young, specifically about the hipsters at PayPal. According to their latest genius move, PayPal is not so pally and they won't pay. The big shut-up continues on other fronts. We'll get into that with the one and only David Starkey. The elites have made a wasteland of the entire Western world. But they're not done with us yet. Ava Valadinga-Brook is here, and Mayor Tusi on a site we haven't seen in over 40 years at Prince's Gate in South Kensington. The flag of the late Shah's empire flying over the Iranian embassy. What's up with that? The bad news, I'm afraid, is that yet again our producers have failed to secure an exclusive interview with the Secretary of State for Digital Media, Culture, Sport, Artichoke Snoods, Pink Unicorns, Be-Penised Women and Grade 1 Ha-Has, whoever that may be this week. So instead we shall have to make do with the stuff that matters in the hour ahead, and that includes the most important part of the show, which is you. What's your take on the woes of the world? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. Grab yourself a cuppa or a snifter, according to taste, and we will have a rollicking hour coming your way right after Polly Middlehurst with the latest news.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story today on GB News, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, says Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities are a sign of Vladimir Putin's desperation following a series of setbacks by his military forces. It comes after officials said at least 11 people have been killed in Ukraine and 64 others injured as the Kremlin launched its biggest airstrike since the start of the war in February. President Biden has also condemned the attack, saying it highlights the brutality of Putin's war. President Zelensky says Russia is trying to wipe Ukrainians off the face of the earth.
They want panic and chaos. They want to destroy our energy system. They are hopeless. The second target is people. Such as time, such goals were specifically chosen to cause as much damage as possible. But we are Ukrainians. We help each other. We believe in ourselves. We restore everything that is destroyed.
Well, for his part, Russia's President Vladimir Putin says he thinks it was right to retaliate after an explosion badly damaged a Russian bridge and military supply line to the illegally occupied Crimea at the weekend. Putin accused Ukraine of a terrorist attack on the bridge, warning that if attacks continued against Russia, there'd be more retaliatory strikes on Ukraine. Now here, Scotland's First Minister says she's going to hold an independence referendum on the 19th of October next year if the UK Supreme Court approves it. Closing the SNP conference in Aberdeen this afternoon, Nicola Sturgeon said leaving the UK would lead to better relationships with England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Ms Sturgeon also said Scotland would rejoin the European Union. The Supreme Court will hear legal arguments this week before deciding if Holyrood has the required powers to legislate for a second vote. Now, the Chancellor has bowed to pressure to bring forward his much-anticipated medium-term fiscal plan. Last week, in an exclusive interview with GB News, Kwasi Kwarteng said he was going to stick to the original date in mid-November. But today, in a letter to the chairman of the Commons Treasury Committee, he said it'll now be published a little earlier, October the 31st being the date. Criminal barristers in England and Wales are now back to work after voting to end strike action. They accepted a pay offer from the Ministry of Justice, along with reforms to set fees for legal aid work. Almost 57% voted to take the deal. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. Gotta love a land of bewigged strikers. Most impressive. Here's an intriguing tweet from a Tory councillor who's told our producers that she wishes to remain anonymous, but she tweeted out earlier today, "Hey, Nadim Zahawi, why am I not allowed to tell people in my ward that the 155 plus asylum seekers housed in a 4-star country house hotel nearby have twice weekly GP clinics at the hotel. Hashtag councillors silence. Twice weekly GP clinics. Fantastic. The NHS is back to doing house calls, but only if you're a, quote, asylum seeker living in a 4-star country house hotel. I think most of us assume when someone has the poor taste to mention that you, the taxpayer, are paying millions of pounds a day to house asylum seekers, that they're all staying in Motel Fleabaggo round the back of the freight yards or the Crapola Lodge, second turn off the mini roundabout, head toward the industrial estate. But as we reported a week ago, they're now being put up at luxury country house hotels such as the Grade 2 listed Stoke Rochford Hall in Lincolnshire. Look at this place. It is absolute. Look at that place. That's where you get off the dinghy at Folkestone and next thing you know, you're in a Grade 2 listed building having tea in the conservatory. Is that just an isolated incident? Apparently not. We now learn His Majesty's government wanted to buy out Camelot Castle at Tintagel on the north coast of Cornwall for a whole year. This, if anything, is even more spectacular, as you may have just seen on Nigel's show. They wanted to buy it for a full year in order to fill it full of channel migrants. These guys who just came across that pathetic English channel would now get to gaze out over the full Atlantic. Apparently the plan was to give Ahmed the East Tower Junior Suite. Oh, that's very nice, isn't it? Look at that. And he's got like those corner window views all over the spectacular Devon countryside when he rouses himself from his four-poster. While Bashir would have, that's for Ahmed, that one. Bashir would have to make do with the standard four-poster room with sea view and jacuzzi. Fortunately, as you just heard on Farage, the owner of Camelot Castle, John Mappin of the famous Mappin and Webb Jewellers, decided to turn down HMG's generous offer of a year's dosh because he thought it wouldn't be good for the neighbourhood. So Ahmed and Bashir will have to take tea with an ocean view. Let's have a look at that Camelot Castle. Oh, look at that. I love that. Have they got the thinly sliced sandwiches and they got the tea cakes there? Oh, a glass of champagne as well. I'm afraid, though, Ahmed and Bashir are going to have to take afternoon tea with an ocean view somewhere else, maybe in a country house hotel near your village. Near your village. Do you have a country house? Oh, sure. You might have a house, but you don't have a country, do you? Not really, not under this nutso policy, not if 1,000 asylum seekers, got to keep doing the scare quotes, asylum seekers a night can just walk into your country. Here they come. They get to be put up at your expense in a Grade 2 listed Lincolnshire stately home with complimentary twice weekly visits from a general practitioner. If you don't know what a general practitioner is, it's like a Zoom call with legs. It can walk about and interact with you. It has a dangly stethoscope at the front that it can use to examine your body in person. Well, not you, obviously. You're not an asylum seeker, but you do get to pay for the hands-on medical care they get, but you can't get. So I thought you might be interested in the subject. What can you do? You, the loser citizen of the United Kingdom, what can you do to help these refugees fleeing the horror and devastation of war-torn France? It's a terrible situation across the Channel. Only the other day, violent warlords seized Andrew Neil's spot on the nude beach at Saint-Tropez. The whole thing is unravelling over there. So how do you play your part to make things better for these fine, upstanding asylum seekers? Well, you could do the responsible thing and get this month's booster shot. Because as this Buckinghamshire doctor's practice helpfully puts it, please support your local GP practice. Vaccination income is vital to the surgery. So why not do your vaccination income is vital to the surgery, so why not do your bit for Britain and get an extra 2 or 3 of the COVID jabbers. That way the GPs of England will get more vaccination income and be able to expand their house calls to asylum seekers from twice a week to 3 or 4 times a week, which means that Ahmed and Bashir will be in tip-top shape and rude health when they get bored of Darjeeling and cucumber sandwiches every afternoon and decide to check out the attractions at the local primary school. It's great news if you're an asylum seeker, because this land is truly a 5-star asylum, where the Royal National Lifeboat Institution will ferry you from the waters of a foreign jurisdiction, an advanced society, a G7 member, one of the big 5 permanent members at the UN Security Council. The RNLI will, quote, rescue you from France and deliver you to the express check-in for the United Kingdom. It's a 2-stage process. First, Dover, where you land, and then Dover Soul, washed down with a decent claret at a Grade 2 listed stately home. Have asylum seekers ever sought a more bounteous asylum? We are governed by madmen, And the only choice at the next election is the even more insane party, who are now 26 points ahead, according to the latest poll. If you're peering closely at that graph and wondering how the violent revolutionary party is doing, well, as George Orwell remarked long ago, there is no turbulence left in England. Let me know what you think about this insane asylum seekers policy. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Last week, the operators of the UK's electricity supply warned us to be prepared for 3-hour power outages this winter to prevent the collapse of the national grid. So this show might not be running on selected winter evenings because even though you put a shilling in the meter, they're not going to give you any power. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster didn't like that kind of talk, and he says relax. Headline from The Guardian. Nadeem Zahawi claims UK winter blackouts are extremely unlikely. On past form, then, I take it that 3-hour blackouts are extremely unlikely, but 4-hour blackouts, that's a whole other issue. We are governed by elites. You'll be familiar with the old joke about the guy who takes his shirt in to be dry cleaned and the fella behind the counter says, "Certainly, sir, that'll be a week on Thursday." And the customer goes, "But it says 24-hour dry cleaners." That's just the name of the shop, sir. Likewise, when it comes to Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance and all the other knights and dames who afflict us, elites is just the name of the shop. 3 years of elite technocrat government has screwed almost the entire Western world. The same incompetent elites have now moved on to shutting down fertilizer plants all over Europe in order to reduce the use of nitrogen in farming. Dutch farmers have been pushing back, so their government is cracking down. Up to 600 farmers will be compelled to get out of the farming business and sell all their land to the Dutch state. Can this really be true? Our friend Eva Valadingerbroek is here. Eva, this sounds even too crazy for the crazies who govern us. But Dutch farmers are to be forced to sell their farms to the government and get out of the farming business.
Yes, you'd think it is too crazy to be true, but it's not too crazy because our government consists of a bunch of inhumane, greedy liars and thieves. So it's very much what we are dealing with right now. And, the protests that the Dutch farmers have been putting up since the summer have not changed their minds because obviously, like I said, these people are thieves and liars and they have their eyes on these farmers' land. So what they did is they came up with a new report in response to the protests, so to say, and instead of changing anything, they just changed the tone. So now they are pushing through, they are ramping it up, and actually the outcome of the new report is worse. So like you said, they are going to forcefully buy out 600 farms in the next year. But it sounds a little nicer in the way that it's written in the little text. So that's it. I really can't say anything else about it. It is theft. They are taking away these people's property. They are taking away their lives. They are taking away businesses that have been in Dutch families for centuries sometimes. And people are becoming desperate. We had a farmer last week, 43-year-old man who killed himself because he said he couldn't take it anymore. And he's not the only one. There are countless of examples like him.
That's heartbreaking. A 43-year-old farmer kills himself because of the government's determination basically to kill Dutch farming. When the state buys 600 farms, what's it going to do? And there's a similar program in the UK and various other countries. But what is the Dutch government going to do with 600 farms?
Well, like they say, of course, that it's because of a nitrogen crisis, which is completely manufactured and made up. We don't have a nitrogen crisis. But what we do have in the Netherlands is a housing crisis because our government lets in over 100,000 migrants a year, approximately. So obviously, our population is growing, and it's not because the Dutch native people are having a ton of babies. We all know that. So these people need to live somewhere. And there is no space left in the Netherlands. So what will they need to do? They will need to seize some of the land of these farmers in order to house new Dutch people. the newcomers of our country. So that is what this is really about. And of course, there's also the element of our elites not wanting us to have an independent or control over our food supply. And they obviously also don't want us to eat meat. So the farmers are standing in the way of their plans, and that's why they are being targeted right now. But we have to stop engaging in this narrative. Like I said, there is no nitrogen crisis. We have to stop even entertaining the thought.
Well, even if there were a so-called nitrogen crisis, I mean, or the bigger climate change things, I mean, would you trust the people who govern us to be able to do anything about that? Right now, since the COVID came along, we haven't gone back to normal. Heathrow is kaput. The baggage handling at Charles de Gaulle in Paris is outrageous. I just heard today that Montreal is like 7 weeks behind with getting its bags to you. So it's now early October. If you flew into Montreal in mid-August, there's a sporting chance they might have your suitcase organized for collection. So these guys can't run basic things like airport baggage handling. Why would you think that Justin Trudeau or Liz Truss or Mark Rutte or any of these guys are going to be able to save the planet? They can't organize the most basic municipal functions.
Of course they can't. And again, the Netherlands, such a tiny country, you know, all of this is completely arbitrary. It shows once again that the things that they say is not what they actually want or what they actually mean. This is nitrogen is just another crisis that they use to take away your rights, to take away, in this case, not just your rights, but also your property. I can't stress this enough. We have a government that says everything that you worked for, that you own, your life, your livelihood, doesn't matter. I want it, and so I get it. You have nothing to say about it. Is that really what the Free West is about? Is that what we want? Is that something that we should accept for any type of crisis that they can just create out of thin air? It's insane. And we should stand up against it. And I hope that the farmers will start doing it again. And they said they will, and I will support them 110%.
What do your fellow Dutchmen make of this, though, Eva? We've just been looking at some footage of that boob of a prime minister of yours riding around on his bicycle like I think it was Queen Wilhelmina used to do a few years back, if I've got your Dutch queen sorted out in my head. I think it was Wilhelmina used to ride around on her bicycle. And people, all the photographers around him, the heroes of the Dutch press, they're all smiling and joking and laughing and having a grand old time. Are the Dutch people on board with the appropriation of their farmers' land and livelihoods?
No, inherently they are not, because they see that this is going to be a problem. And they will definitely, if they don't see it now, they will definitely see it soon. Because we're talking about our food supply. We're also talking, obviously, about energy prices that are going through the roof. So this winter could be hungry and cold for a lot of Dutch people. We're suddenly going to face serious poverty that's going to be lasting. But what I'm afraid of is exactly those little minions that you saw walking around our prime minister that are going to tell the Dutch people that the farmers are the problem. And that none of this, of course, is the government's fault. And that it's all a legitimate crisis that needs to be countered. And that people like me are far-right conspiracy theorists who are trying to warn you for things that don't exist. So that is what they are doing. And I have the most crazy examples of this. Even the other day, which would be funny, Mark, because I know that you always love to call me the milkmaid, right? Because that is what the Dutch press used to call me in response to the things that I've said about the farmers' protest. And now a Dutch state-funded medium has come forth and used that photo of mine that you sometimes put at the beginning of the show, where I'm holding some bottles of milk protesting for our farmers. And they said, this girl is not just holding milk. She's holding a symbol of white supremacy. So that is what they do. They come, they vilify us, they try to put you in the bad corner of the spooky people, all the far right, all crazy. And that way they try to influence the public opinion on the farmers. And I think that our government counts on them for it. And they just try to take as much time as they can to stall it and to have, you know, the image be changed about the farmers and about what they are doing. And that's how they always do it. That's their strategy. And I hope that our Dutch people will see through it for once and will say, no, listen, you just don't touch people's property. Get out.
Well, if milk is a symbol of white supremacy, I would have thought char-broiled hamburgers would be a symbol of black supremacy. Oh, there we are. There's our favourite Hilversum milkmaid. Yeah, that's code. That's white supremacy code right there. Take it off the air before they complain to Ofcom about it. This Hilversum milkmaid has been sent to save the Netherlands. These are first world nations we're talking about, and people are going to be freezing and starving and dying because of the incompetence of guys like that bicycling nitwit in the Netherlands and an awful lot of other governments around Europe and the rest of the West. Thank you. And that is a terrible... By the way, this 43-year-old farmer driven to suicide by these lunatics. They don't care. Thank you, Ava.
It almost is like that's what they want.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. They don't shed a tear for the victims, the targets of these enlightened progressive policies. Great to see you as always, Ava. Coming up, we're going to get to your comments, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and a trio of heavyweights, Toby Young, Maya Tusi and David Starkey. Don't touch that dial, because you never know what horrors are lurking on some of these other channels. We're coming right back.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let us channel what the people are saying. We wanted to know how you felt about all these quote-unquote asylum seekers being offered twice a weekly GP checkups at their luxury hotel. A GP is a general practitioner. It used to be a common acronym in British usage, but it's almost dropped out entirely over the last few years. But it's been brought back. The role of GP has been brought back just for these migrants. Norman says, disgrace. We have millions of tax-paying citizens, some of whom have likely missed cancer diagnoses because of all the lockdowns, yet the illegal migrants who arrived here a fortnight ago are prioritised. Yeah, well, we wouldn't want their stage 2 cancer metastasizing into stage 4 just because it's kind of hard to get to see a doctor, would we? Not for these guys. Joe says, how many millions has Priti Patel and now Suella Braverman given to France to ferry them all over. It's worse than that. France just waves them off the beaches of Calais, and they sail like 20 yards off the edge of the beach, off the toes of the last nude bather. Actually, a bit chilly for the nude bather. You want to be down with Andrew Neil in Saint-Tropez for that. But they sail about 20 feet, and then the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, which is supposed to be for the United Kingdom and Ireland, is bobbing around in French waters to ferry them over to you. Titch says, will there be dentists, chiropodists, dietitians, barbers, manicurists, clothiers, tech devices, repair services? Oh, you're forgetting. What about a therapeutic massage and a seaweed wrap, Titch? You're not thinking. You don't want to get into trouble with the European Court of Human Rights for not providing seaweed wraps. Pauline says, that's the United Kingdom government for you, no matter what party is in power. They're all cut from the same cloth. They're all a disgrace. No, Pauline, it's worse when the Tories do it, because Labour basically are in favour of open borders openly. They don't want to do anything about this, and most of the guys, if you ask them, oh, it's a disgrace, well, no, what's wrong with Ahmed and Bashir living it up at some country house hotel? They're all in favour of it. The annoying thing about the Tories is all these tough-talking twits like Priti Patel pretend to be opposed to it and pretend they're going to do something about it, and the result is what you see. A week or two back on this show, I was talking to Toby Young, proprietor of the Free Speech Union and the Daily Skeptic, about PayPal's decision to cancel him and his enterprises. And after questions were raised in Parliament, their hasty de-cancellation and restoration of his accounts. PayPal is a de facto monopoly in internet payment processing, so I remarked en passant. This is actually beyond that, because it's not like The Guardian declining to publish your column or Simon & Schuster refusing to print your book. What we're talking about here is services that are essential basically to just operating a business in the modern world. If it's PayPal, it could be Visa and MasterCard. If it's Visa and MasterCard, it could easily be the electric company turning your lights out or the water board shutting you off. I didn't really intend that as a suggestion to the 12-year-old gender-fluid trusty fundies who run our corporations, but that's apparently how PayPal took it. So a couple of days ago, they announced the change to their acceptable use policy, whereby customers who send, post or publish any materials that, quote, promote misinformation would have $2,500 removed from their accounts. Got that? PayPal's a banking service that allows you to send and receive money over the internet. But somehow you now have to be in ideological compliance with them. So it's a bit like going to NatWest and putting your savings in there, and then the hitherto pleasant bank manager sees your Instagram post about migrants whooping it up at a stately home and confiscates 2,500 quid. And the following day you're on Facebook and you express some skepticism about having to get the 37th Pfizer shot, and the bank manager deducts another $2,500 from your account. And when you get your monthly statement and you look at it, you think, gee, maybe I should move to HSBC. But as you've no longer got any money, it's no longer an issue. PayPal has now walked back its move to fine customers for their opinions, saying that the new acceptable use policy was released, quote, in error. So in PayPal's version of the news, that they'd now be confiscating your dough for promoting disinformation, the only disinformation being promoted came from PayPal. Have they fined themselves $2,500 yet? Toby Young joins me. Toby, do you buy PayPal's explanation for this?
No, I don't. I think this is another example of people power, Mark. After it announced its new policy, whereby it was granting itself the right to help itself to $2,500 from its customers' accounts per violation. Not just, if you generally engaged in behaviour PayPal disapproved of. It wasn't saying it would fine you $2,500, per week or per month for engaging in this kind of wrong think. No, per violation. So that caused, I think, widespread panic, understandably, amongst its customers. And over the weekend, boycott PayPal began trending on Twitter. People began to try and close their accounts and withdraw their deposits in droves. It was the digital equivalent of a run on the bank. And PayPal, facing catastrophe, did an immediate reverse ferret and said, oh no, we only released that update to our acceptable use policy in error. But it tells you something, Mark, that things are so bad at PayPal and the actual explanation of what went on is so embarrassing that the cover story is that they released this in error. The cover story is that they are guilty of misinformation, which is precisely the sin they announced they were going to punish with these draconian fines. So God knows what's really going on, but it's embarrassing.
Well, we do know that you actually gave a sensible reaction to this, because when PayPal had their foot on your throat, and then the guy at PayPal says, OK, I'm going to take his foot off your throat, you said basically, well, I've got the message that these guys hate me and want to destroy me, and so I'm going to try and make alternative arrangements rather than just go trotting meekly back to PayPal. Once you're told that they're considering, as you say, this is for every offence, $2,500. So a guy like you who says something offensive like 8 times a day, by the end of the first week, you'd be $2 million in the hole or something. Why don't people get the message and actually say, OK, I've had enough of this evil company that hates me. I'm going to put it out of business.
Yeah, I think both of us would probably be bankrupt by the end of this segment, Mark, if they were fining people per violation. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to trust PayPal, given that it said this. I mean, it has rode back a bit, but not entirely. In the correction, it said that it wasn't going to fine people $2,500 if they promoted misinformation. It didn't say it wasn't going to fine them if they engaged in other kinds of wrongthink, which are listed now in its acceptable use policy, including what was described as objectionable posts. No more detail than that, just objectionable. So it still has enormous latitude to simply help itself to your funds if you're foolish enough to leave any in your PayPal account. And I think the irony here is, Mark, that the woke CEO of PayPal, Dan Schulman, it won't surprise you to learn, was at Davos earlier this year, a guest of the World Economic Forum, and gave an interview on stage, the theme of which was what differentiates good companies from great companies is trust. And the way to earn customers' trust is not to produce a good service, an excellent product, but to promote social activism, to do what you can to create a better world, i.e. introduce policies like the one it just introduced. But actually, that's ended up destroying trust in the brand. And I think if you looked at PayPal's share price this morning after trading opened in New York, it was down about 6%. i.e. about $5 billion in value was wiped off PayPal because people are beginning to lose trust in the company. And it's not surprising.
No, it's not surprising because I don't know what I'm looking for in a bank manager, but a bank manager who'll only let me have my own money if I agree with him isn't part of the equation. You know, Toby, people sometimes talk about, the right is very good at opinion websites on the internet and news aggregators on the internet. But why doesn't the right figure out that all these people hate you and start up its own Facebook, its own PayPal, its own internet service providers?
Yeah, I mean, you often hear this argument that there could be just a market solution to this problem. The difficulty is that they are monopoly providers. It's very difficult to compete with these giant behemoths. In PayPal, for instance, is 8 times larger than its nearest competitor. And, even for people like me who have the kind of entrepreneurial flair to start up different news publishing sites like the Daily Skeptic, if PayPal decide overnight with no notice to deplatform you, it can cause serious harm to your business. And there isn't another equally well-trusted, or at least there wasn't, provider, payment processor who could perform the same service and attract like donations. So, it's all very well to say, well, just switch to another company. And that's what we've done. But they have such a monopoly in this market that it's quite difficult for any other company to compete.
No, you're quite right about that, Toby. Thank you. I personally speaking, I loathe PayPal, and I very much think after this the company deserves to be totally destroyed. If its share price has only fallen 6%, you want to add a 0 to that. And I know all the stuff about due impartiality, so anytime anyone from PayPal wants to come on and argue the toss with me, you're more than welcome to. Thank you, Toby. It's tempting to be cynical about the protests we've seen in the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have seen them before, and they stir the blood, but they never quite close the deal. Nevertheless, the individual heroism is remarkable. Here are a couple of girls opening up their body bags and flipping the middle finger in American fashion to the Ayatollah Khomeini, a great scholar who gave extensive dating advice on how after shagging your sheep it is not permissible to eat her. They're flipping the finger not only to the Ayatollah Khomeini but his successor, who is alive and well. The protests have spread around the world. In London we saw something we haven't seen for almost half a century: the flag of the Shah's old empire, the once famous lion and sun flag, briefly being raised over the Islamic Republic's embassy to the court of St. James's. Maya Tusi, whom you can follow on Twitter and YouTube, joins me. Let me ask you about the significance of that, because we occasionally see the old red ensign of colonial days being waved by Hong Kong protesters objecting to communist China. What does it mean when people run up the Shah's flag over the Islamic Republic's embassy?
Firstly, thanks for having me, and thanks to you guys in GBNews for actually talking about this, and the rest of the mainstream media are actually not even bothering to actually properly cover this. It does matter, and it's not just the Iranians in exile in London doing this. It's actually one of the main chants that you'll be hearing on the streets in Iran, apart from saying "take your Islam and go" because it's an anti-Muslim rule rebellion. They're also saying "come back Shah, come back Shah." And it does matter because it's in the blood of the Persian Iranian culture to actually not have this sort of kind of anarcho-Islamic republic. Its constitutional monarchy is the only best system that kind of works with parliamentary democracy in Iran. And this whole rebellion is essentially against the Muslim rule, because less than 40% of Iranians declare themselves as Muslims. A lot of people in the world think, it's probably 90%, 95% Muslim as a country. It's not. Just because the regime says it's an Islamic republic doesn't mean most of the people are. That's the main problem. But I think one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of your segment is very important. Over the past 43 years, we've had all these rebellions. We've had a number of uprisings and protests, and all those causes mattered. But in reality, you had the students rising up, you had a rigged election in 2009, the Green Movement happened. All those were shot down easily because they were mostly led by, younger people, but educated and middle classes. And, you just had to basically shoot a couple of them. The rest would disappear, unfortunately. This time, they've lost everybody. The young, the old, the poor, the rich, from all cities and towns. You've got the Persian Iranians, Kurdish Iranians, Turkish Iranians. And as you said, as you showed the picture, school kids are coming out. They're taking off their headscarves, burning their headscarves. And one of the main chants on the streets are right now is a woman, life, liberty. But there's also a second part of it, which is man, nation, prosperity. And so women, school kids are leading this revolution and uprising. And I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing some of the other mainstream outlets and liberals keep calling it protests. It's no longer a protest. It's a revolution, as you guys are actually calling it.
Well, let me just make sure I've understood that, because a decade ago, whenever it was, when we had the Arab Spring, that was very much, as in Egypt, hardcore Islamic believers like the Muslim Brotherhood saying we're sick of the secular dictators. You're saying that in Iran there's actually an anti-Islamic component to this that is serious and just doesn't want. It's not that it's arguing for an end to the regime, it's an end basically to the ideological basis of the regime.
Absolutely. And what I would say is certain previous revolutions, the so-called revolutions, are not actually people's revolutions. What you saw in the Arab Spring were not people's revolutions, and not all of them, not all countries. And these are, you got the military coups that has happened in the past, but there's also such thing as called as a non-military coup. So there's still the militants taking over, and you still got a few 100,000 people going on streets in Egypt, for example, causing trouble. It's very different to what you're seeing in Iran, which is a people's uprising. There is, on the one hand, there is no militant groups. There is no certain agenda in that sense. But for once, as you said, obviously the main agenda is against the Muslim rule to get Islam, the political ideology of Islam, out of government and the state, because it doesn't actually belong to the Iranian political system. But there is, for once, a bit of unity that we've never had before in any previous uprising in Iran. Now you have the National Council of Iran, which is outside of Iran. This is the umbrella group that has all the opposition groups, and the leader of the National Council of Iran is actually the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi.
Yep.
And right now, as I said, there's an aspects of Iranian society that are chanting "Come back, Shah." They're also saying Reza Shah and his grandfather, "We are sorry, we are sorry." But not everybody, of course, right now would say in Iran, "Oh yeah, definitely bring back the constitutional monarchy and everything else." But there's definitely an appetite. But the reality is that the Crown Prince is leading the council. The idea, the consensus inside and outside of Iran is to get rid of the regime, bring the council, hold a referendum, and actually have a couple of options on the ballot paper, whether it's constitutional monarchy or whether it's some sort of secular republic. And they want to actually do it in a very peaceful way. This is not a bloody, obviously there's going to be a bloody phase before we actually finish it, but it is not a violent, aggressive revolution with some sort of evil agenda. It's just people's uprising.
No, well, Reza Shah, Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, is still a youngish man, young, middle-aged, in the full prime of life, and he might well be what the Iranian people prefer after these stern, full-bearded, fire-breathing ayatollahs for 40 years. Thank you very much for that, Maya. We're going to follow this story and stay on it. Stump the Steyn looms, GB Views at gbnews.uk. You can ask me anything. And the man who takes the long view of the passing Charivari, David Starkey, is here. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Most of the stuff we talk about on this show, the child rape gangs infesting English cities, 1,000 migrants a night landing on the southern shore, the thousands upon thousands crippled by the COVID vaccines. Very few other stations talk about it. It might just be that the presenters over there aren't terribly interested, or it might be that there is a kind of subtle, remorseless shrinkage of the bounds of free expression going on, a malign trend quite at odds with this country's traditions. Let's chew that over with the one and only Dr. David Starkey. David, is there something, you know, all the stories we're talking about, PayPal trying to crush Toby Young like a bug, is this something new in the English world, or can we find precedents for it?
It's new old. I think the thing that we need to remember, of course, is the natural state of human society is hostility to freedom of speech. People don't actually really like hearing views that they disagree with. I mean, come on, Mark, you and I are often guilty of this. We say very rude things about our opponents. We use words which suggest they are ill-intentioned. We use words that suggest, wouldn't it be nice if they shut up? Learning to debate, as it were, coolly, is very difficult because all those of us who feel strongly, passions naturally come to the surface. And what we had to do to get that world of freedom of speech, which was seen as the essential characteristic of English politics for the 18th and 19th, most of the 20th century, we had to make really difficult choices. You know, one of the first ones we had to do was to stop demonizing and punishing people that we disagree with. Again, it's extraordinarily difficult that you could actually lose power without being punished. We had consciously to decide to do that. The last political leader that is convicted of, or effectively, in fact he was formally, though the penalties were never visited on him, was the Earl of Oxford, Robert Harley, for negotiating the peace treaties France at Utrecht, and when the Whigs came to power with the new dynasty, with the Georgians, he was put in the Tower. He was forced into exile in France. That's the last time it happens. But suddenly, we're seeing that again. We're seeing that with Trump. We're seeing the desire, he's lost office, but we're seeing the desire to punish him, make sure he can never hold office again. Look at Johnson. Johnson has lost office, but there is the House of Commons getting on its moral high horse, saying we're going to have the Committee of Privileges that will rule him in violation of the privileges of the House, that he's lied to it, therefore he should be punished, therefore he should lose his seat. You see what I mean? There's a move to punish wrong opinion, and where politicians lead, companies like PayPal follow. We've got to stop it, but it's learned behavior. And the other thing, which is very striking, is what's happened now, as indeed politics in the 17th century, the 16th century, is we've got a notion that there's only one opinion. You've got to have a notion that there's a choice of opinions. In other words, we've got to admit that most difficult thing, Mark, for you and me, that we might be wrong. And it's seriously difficult thing to learn to do. And the odd thing is, of course, religion is one of the things that, as it were, most drives people to think we are absolutely right. But so much modern politics, and particularly the politics of the left, has become quasi-religious. You know, Andrew Doyle of this parish, one of our presenters, has written about the new Puritanism. And it's a Puritanism which sees it as only one right opinion. The eco-protesters think that anything but their opinion is not simply wrong, but morally wicked. In other words, there's no right to freedom of speech because your opponent is wicked. So we need to demoralize. We need to pull back. You know what I do? I begin teaching debating at school. The notion, in other words, I mean, it's something really old-fashioned, but it would work.
And teach the debating technique whereby you're handed your position arbitrarily, so you have to argue pro the motion for 10 minutes and then argue. You're absolutely right, though, that these days, increasingly, there's only one correct position, whether we're talking about COVID or climate change or Islam or transgender bathrooms. But if you said to these people, you're just like the guys who wanted to put the Earl of Oxford in the Tower and then behead him, they would think you're crazy because they think that they are progressive and at the peak of enlightenment.
They wouldn't. You know, there is again the new Marxism of the 1960s and 70s began to recognize that to bring about the world it wanted, it would have to repress freedom of speech. It's built into their worldview because, of course, they're progressive in a very, very special sense. They think they've arrived at utopia. They think they understand the world. And, of course, they're increasingly, and this is the other thing, so terrifying, Mark, they're able to call on so much expert opinion. The science says. The science says about COVID. The science says about climate change. And this is one of the most profound dangers. What we've actually seen are professions like science, which should be skeptical. Science doesn't know anything. Science has got provisional hypotheses that appear to work. You know, Newton is questioned. The greatest of scientists have to be questioned. Even you know, Einstein and his fuzzy hair have had to be questioned. You've got to deal in a world again in which there are two truths simultaneously in science. You've got the truth of quantum mechanics, and you've got the truths of Einstein, and they're different. But we've lost this gift. We've got to recover it.
No, you're absolutely right there, David, and you're quite right to single out Einstein's haircut, because I can't believe he was following the science when he came out of the salon with that. Thank you very much, David. It's always great to hear from you. Let's stump it out just quickly. David says, pressing question, milk first or tea first? You're going to loathe me. I don't like any milk in. I love a cup of Darjeeling at a nice country house hotel with a couple of asylum seekers every afternoon, but I don't want any milk in it. Just a little slice of lemon. Thé au citron, if you'll forgive the expression, and you should. Charlie said, what's the difference between a government saying you got to wear a headscarf, as in Iran, and the government saying you got to wear a face mask, as in the West? You know, I made that point on the radio in the United States in March 2020. So you got to get up early in the morning to beat me to these things, but you're quite right, David. They're points on the same continuum. I got some good news for you. 2 words. Dan Wootton, what you got, Dan?
Mark Steyn, thank you so much. And it's actually my last show just for a few days. So I'm bringing the gang back together tonight. We've got Farage, we've got Jim Davidson, we've got Tom Bauer, we've got Stephen Glover, we've got Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, and Belinda DeLucy, and Mark Steyn. We have my mother at some point as well, because she is the reason that I'm going to be away for a few days. So I thought she's got to come on and introduce herself to everyone.
OK, well, now you've intrigued us all. I just hope it's not like the Elton John or Cher farewell tours, where you're going to be pulling this sort of thing every week. But as you heard, he's got all the old favourites on the show. Don't miss it. The best show in late night telly. Stay safe, stay free. And his mum.
Hello, Aidan McGivern here with the latest forecast from the Met Office. Clear spells for many overnight, and that means, of course, it will be chilly in places, particularly in the south, whilst a bit more of a breeze and showers continue in the north, especially for northern Scotland and the northwest of Scotland, where tight isobars remain just to the south of an area of low pressure moving into Norway. And it's in this area where we'll see further spells of cloud and showers overnight, along with a keen breeze. A bit more shelter there for the east of Scotland, as well as for much of England and Wales, Northern Ireland, keeping clear spells overnight as well. So where we get the clear spells, temperatures into the mid or even low single figures, and perhaps for some of the more sheltered spots across central parts of England, 0 degrees. So certainly a cold start to the day on Tuesday. Milder for the northwest of Scotland, where we'll see further showers from the word go. They'll also affect parts of Northern Ireland. And then those showers turning to perhaps more persistent rain later in the afternoon. We'll also see 1 or 2 showers for southern Scotland, northern England, but further south, dry with plenty of sunny spells, particularly in the south of England and South Wales, with 15 or 16 Celsius and with light winds as well. So feeling quite pleasant here. 13 or 14 degrees for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it does turn increasingly wet into the evening with spells of rain pushing in from the Atlantic, heavy and persistent over western hills. A bit more ragged in its appearance there across eastern Scotland and northern England, North Wales. So I think the rain on and off through the night, but certainly by dawn, many places seeing thick cloud and outbreaks of rain and 10 degrees because of the cloud cover. But chilly start for East Anglia and the southeast, as well as the East Midlands. Low single figures possible in some sheltered spots. However, it's here where we keep the sunny spells into Wednesday afternoon, whilst the area of rain in the north pushes into northern England, eventually the North Midlands, as well as parts of Wales, and tends to peter out. Thursday and Friday look very unsettled with strong winds, showers and longer spells of rain.